must come here and say very clearly that we don't understand him from that ideological perspective. But we seem to understand him very clearly, where the philosophy of government seems to be that it is about primitive accumulation of wealth for oneself. There are things which have been stated by his detractors who have been with him in government, and we have not heard him come out to refute them, to confute them. We have seen him move on and say, you can call me names, you can give me labels and titles, they do not matter anymore. About shares and people saying that we don't take another person's share, there's a fable which was told many centuries ago by a Greek man called Aesop. And he said that once there was food which was to be shared between the lion and the donkey. And the donkey was given the opportunity to do the sharing out. And the donkey thought that he would share in equal parts, 50%, 50%.
Right.
Whereupon lion pounced upon him immediately. And the same food was presented to hare, and hare was told, can you share it out equally? And hare took a small bit for himself and left the rest for the lion, what is otherwise known as the lion's share. And the lion said, oh, you are so wise. How did you know how to share so equally? He said, I know the lion's share. So there's always something called the lion's share. When they talk about these things in those forums, you've got to know who the lion is. And the lion will talk about and against things like tribalism. I don't want to see tribalism. I don't want to see corruption.
Yes.
It's called preaching water
and taking
wine.
In your heart of hearts, you believe that that's basically what the president is doing, preaching water and taking wine. A president who is interested in running this nation, and because he understands very well that if there's no peace, then he has no nation to run. Why would he be preaching water and taking wine if we're talking about him, you know, saying, and these are his words, you know, we want a peaceful nation, we should not be, you know, have negative ethnicity, we should not have a divisive, you know, kind of approach when we're talking politics and all that.
You know, Linda, when you listen to a politician, don't listen to what they say. Listen to what they don't say.
Okay.
No politician worth his salt or their salt would go to bed hungry for you.
Okay.
Would go to bed thinking about you. It's about themselves and how to perpetuate themselves in power. It is now the responsibility of those who are governed, those who then give power to these politicians, to hold them back. That's why there's the concept of checks and balances. Because the propensity for politicians to run away from accountability is so high.
Okay.
And that's why you give a politician power and you also tie their foot and try to pull back.
Okay.
That is the reason. So when you create a three-way government, what we are telling the legislature is hold back the executive. And what you're telling the judiciary is keep the executive in check. And what you're telling the executive is that, yes, make the law, but take it to parliament. And that allow judiciary to interpret. So when this gentleman, he was a French guy called Montesquieu, conceptualized separation of power, it was a clear admission that left on their own, any of these organs can run away.
Okay.
So separate powers so that you keep the checks and balances.
That's how separated are our powers, to be honest.
No, now that is now the problem, that in our situation, and indeed even in any of the political situations, until the other day, separation of powers was a very clear concept in America. Not anymore.
Okay.
Not anymore. Because what you've seen there is that you have an executive president who is actually trying to operate like an authoritarian, like a king. So, but the essence of that constitutional democracy was to enable those three organs to work together. So we may not be having it here, but the intentions of our constitution are very clear. We may not be following it, and indeed we don't expect the politician, typical politician, to even be held back. Remember President Uhuru used to complain that he would have done things by this constitution. The same thing.